Children should be at least 16 to access social media, according to a growing number of MEPs. 483 European lawmakers have voted in favour of a new but non-binding report advocating age limits and access rules to protect young people from harmful online content. Tonight we ask, will the new rules really happen? And will they be enough to protect Europe's children? Good evening. The European Parliament is now pushing for a minimum age of 16 for using social media platforms, saying the move is aimed at safeguarding young people's well-being and keeping online activity age appropriate. Well, the resolution also calls for limits on AI tools and certain algorithms, and it's already drawing mixed reactions from parents and communities across Europe. Let's take a closer look.
On Wednesday, the European Parliament approved a resolution calling for a minimum age of 16 for social media access. The measure aims to ensure age-appropriate online activity for adolescents and to reduce the mental health impact of excessive social media use. According to a draft published in October, children under 16 would only be allowed on social media with parental or guardian consent. The proposal also sets a minimum age of 13 for social media platforms, video sharing services, and AI companions. Concerns over social media's impact on children's health and safety are rising worldwide. Companies including TikTok, Snapchat, Google, and Meta platforms have faced lawsuits in the United States over their role in the mental health crisis. Parisians expressed mixed reactions to the initiative. Some said social media exposes children to harmful content, while others highlighted the potential for self-directed learning.
It's both a positive and a negative point. Positive in the sense that we're not directly instilling in them the desires and harmful ideas that social media can promote. But on the other hand, allowing them access to social media lets them learn on their own, discover for themselves what to do and what not to do, and how to use social media effectively. And I think it's also crucial to support these young people under 16 with social media.
French President Emmanuel Macron has previously called for a ban on social media for children under 15, although each EU member state would still set its own age limits. The resolution also calls for a ban on loot boxes, virtual items purchased with real money, and age-inappropriate recommendation algorithms, as well as measures to ensure content is designed appropriately for different age groups.
I think that banning it is perhaps a bit harsh, a bit extreme. We need to regulate it. We need to find ways and means, perhaps to limit access, perhaps also to limit the time spent. We also need to work on parental responsibility, because actually, we can decide a number of things at the highest levels. But above all, we should not absolve parents of their responsibilities regarding the protection of their own children.
Well, listen, I have 3 grown children who are a bit older. They experienced the beginning of social media, and I don't think they suffered from it. However, it's clear that what needs to be banned is hate speech on social media, that's for sure. I have a problem with a total ban on social media because it's also a way to educate oneself. My daughter, for example, discovered many books of literature thanks to social media, so it's not all negative.
The resolution is non-binding and does not directly establish policy.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further and in more detail is Antonio Buscardini, CEO of Buscardini Communications, based in Brussels, Belgium. Antonio, very good to see you on PrimeTime. Thanks for joining us. Only a first move then, this, not yet law, but how much of a big step is it for the EU?
Hi, Guy. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be with you. It is extremely important because it's a political sign. In this piece, we saw what happened recently in France. Um, if we go back in time, it was a commissioned study, in fact, that showcased the importance of changing at least the current law. Um, it is a discussion that is happening in the EU. Also, the Danish presidency that started this presidency in June set as a priority to regulate the access of children to social media, and even in a wider aspect to smartphones. It's also interesting to see that this report, not a directive, was widely approved by the chamber. It's very rare to see such a consensus at the European Parliament. So 483 MEPs voted in favor. So this is a political sign that the society is claiming, asking for this. Also, parents and schools, because it's I thought it was very funny to see the contribution of a young man in this report saying that through social media he gets access to education. So that's a point that very often is brought by those that are against the banning of social media. But I think that what is in discussion right now in the EU is not banning, but it's in fact regulation. It is to bring parents to the discussion, to have parental control, and to limit through regulation access to something that is not regulated.
Antonio, let me ask you about this, because they're obviously safety concerns are a big legitimate driver behind this push that we've seen. But to what extent do you think politics also is a factor? And is there a sense of a sort of ideological division between those who would reject any form of banning of anything and those who possibly are more inclined to want to control the behaviour of others?
Somehow, yes. I mean, you couldn't choose a better country with France. Some people are just allergic to the idea that something is prohibited, but that's indeed ideological. I think in a wider spectrum, the figures are here. 97% of young people go online every day. There is indeed a discussion between teachers, parents on how to limit the access of young kids to social media. There is a political will of doing something because it's not only in the EU. Let's talk perhaps about Australia. In 2 weeks' time, something will happen in Australia, I believe on the 10th of December, where the country will ban access to social media to children under 16. So this will be a reality. So it will be very interesting to see how the society will cope with this new mechanism and what lessons the EU can take from this. There was, as I said before, a political will from the Danish presidency to target and talk about these issues, because there are different realities within the 27 member states. France brought the topic a few months ago to the table, but there are some countries that indeed don't have any legislation regarding this issue. There is still a conversation that needs to ongo within the EU in order to reach somehow what we could call as a proposal for a draft of the directive.
Do you think there's any sense in which the political consensus, which does seem to be gathering now around some kind of restriction, some kind of control of social media for children, do you think there's any sense in which that is backed by research? That, you know, for years societies have taken quite a long time to ban things that we now know are dangerous. You know, cigarettes would be a good example. Now we look back and we might think, goodness me, we should have done this a lot sooner because the evidence is so clear. There is now, isn't there, a base of evidence which does seem to point in different ways to different forms of harm that this causes young people. Do you think that that evidence base is now what's helping to create this sort of political consensus?
Unfortunately, we had guinea pigs in this process because in this report that you showed a few minutes ago, we saw a parent saying, my kids are older and they grew up in the world where social media was accepted and they learned a lot. Right, but one can argue as well that some parents that have kids right now of 8, 9, 10 years old have some difficulties indeed to cope with this reality because since the beginning, since an early age, those kids are exposed to smartphones, are exposed to social media. It's quite different than someone who discovered social media just 10 years ago because it didn't exist before. So, it's an evolution, it's a process within our societies. It is indeed a step-by-step approach. I think what would be interesting to see would be the next step in terms of privacy. So how could we limit? Because I'm having some difficulty to use the word ban because I don't see it really as a ban. I see it as a certain limitation, a regulation towards a certain category in our society. And indeed, the next topic would be, how do you do that?
It's a good question.
How do you
how
do you basically control who can or not access a social or create a social media account?
Exactly, and that's something I was going to ask you about. Is how enforceable? Let's say that this does become law, and there is an age limit, age restriction. How enforceable is that? I mean, is this just something very simple where, you know, it's self-declared? You know, are you over 16? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Presumably, something more sophisticated would have to come into play.
Well, there is an answer for that, an EU-oriented answer. First of all, there is obviously the beginning of a war with the big tech. That's something that we experience multiple times throughout different mandates. Regulation versus big tech. So that is indeed an issue. We already have that with boosting, for example, political information or content on Meta, for instance. The limitation that you can have in the geography within the EU. So first of all, we need to have an EU approach. So by the end of the day, I mean, we need to have a directive that seems to be clear, that would clarify the age, that will clarify what is needed to create an account, what is needed to also feed an account, because that's the second point. When you post something and you're 14, should you not have a parental filter? So that's something that at the end of the day, we will need to have a discussion. We don't have any concrete example within the EU. We have intentions, we have studies, we have political statements, but we should indeed keep an eye on what is happening in Australia, starting in 2 weeks' time.
What chance do you think we've got, Antonio, of changing the behaviour of teenagers? I mean, I asked that almost knowing the answer. Having a 14-year-old, I'm currently paying my 14-year-old to read classic novels, which she's doing begrudgingly. She'll be mortified in the unlikely event that she's watching this, hearing me divulge it. But it's sort of any attempt to try and incentivise her away from social media. It's a very, very powerful pull, isn't it? Have we got any chance as a society, do you think, of changing the behaviour of young people? Or am I being too cynical about this?
We need a social contract. We need a social contract between parents and schools. I have younger kids, 5 and 8, and I see in the school my girls go that there is indeed a conversation and a will from parents to, when you decide something, it needs to be for all, because that's the thing. You can't have exceptions. So we go back again to the idea of prohibiting something within the group, but that seems to be essential at a certain scale in order to boost another behavior. To imagine that kids could play with each other without having the need of going online at this young age. If you don't have a contract with schools, parents, and the school, it becomes really difficult, because then it's up to the parents, up to the family to decide how you are going to implement in your own house a decision that collectively in the school is not taken.
And finally, Antonio, I just wanted to ask you another sort of question about our chances of success here. How much power do you think communities and politicians have in the face of, you know, essentially the world's richest men, the world's biggest company, organisations upon which the very fabric of society is now built? Have they become so powerful that we simply just cannot win this battle?
I think we have a few examples here where some groups, some big techs lost some battles. So I wouldn't be that pessimistic in that sense. The main point here is, are we doing the right thing? And perhaps what we saw yesterday in Strasbourg in this vote could give us a certain hope, because, Gaia, I don't remember a vote that was so consensual in this chamber to reach almost 500 members saying yes, that this tax makes sense. When we have a chamber that goes from the extreme left to the extreme right with different political families today, so that's a sign somehow that this goes beyond politics. This is indeed a family and societal issue that we are all facing in the EU, but also elsewhere.
Very, very interesting indeed. Antonio, it's always very good to hear your analysis. Thank you very much for joining us from Brussels. Thank you. Okay, after the break, Azerbaijan's foreign minister outlines what he calls a constructive and warm set of talks with senior Italian officials in Rome. Do stay with us. Welcome back. This is Prime Time. Azerbaijan's foreign minister, Ceyhun Bayramov, says he has held what he describes as a constructive and warm round of discussions with senior Italian officials in Rome. Now, he says the talks centred on energy, economic cooperation and joint work across multilateral platforms. And in a separate round of meetings, he met Italy's Senate President, the Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies, and later held an audience with Pope Leo XIV at the Vatican. Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss this in more detail is A News's Anastasia Lavrina. Anastasia, good to see you back in the studio.
Thank you very much for having me
with us. Now, he said the talks were focused on energy and a wide range of different things, but how does this fit into this wider relationship that's developing between Baku and Rome?
Well, the visit builds on a strategic partnership framework established after the high-level visits of the President Ilham Aliyev to Italy and then the President of Italy to Azerbaijan. This year, the President of Italy visited Azerbaijan, having very constructive dialogue with the leader of Azerbaijan. Therefore, this visit was timely and at the same time also bringing new impetus in the development of the bilateral relations. It's important to mention that Italy is a very strong partner for Azerbaijan in many spheres. I would say the strongest one in the European Union when it comes to the political support, the cooperation, let's say the recognition of the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, especially during the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Italy always supported Azerbaijan and its willingness to restore its territorial integrity by peaceful means, supporting on the international platforms. And this partnership started in the 19th, especially very important year, it's 1997, when the national leader Heydar Aliyev, being a president of Azerbaijan Republic, had an official visit to Italy. So it was a date when the strategic partnership started to be developed in many spheres. Then after its energy partnership, when Azerbaijan started to export the oil and gas and to Italy through the salt and gas corridor as well, and Italy still remains one of the key energy partners. Now two sides are also discussing the possibilities for the cooperation in the green energy sphere, and Italy again among the first countries expressed the willingness to support Azerbaijan in the rebuilding of Karabakh, restoration of these lands which was completely destroyed during the occupation period. So I guess what's very important, you also mentioned the meeting with the Pope. So Italy knows Azerbaijan as a country who is willing to support Italy in its also restoration processes, because important to remember, in October the First Lady and the First Vice President Mehriban Aliyeva visited Italy and had a very constructive dialogue with in Vatican with many officials. The restorations of Vatican catacombs and other sacred Christian era monuments by an Azerbaijani Heydar Aliyev foundations is symbolically powerful. In Italy, it's always being highlighted as a very important moment in the bilateral relations. Then the Mehriban Aliyeva also participated in the opening ceremony of the restoration project of the catacombs of Kamodila, playing a symbolic role in these bilateral relations. So this time when the Minister Bayramov met with the Pope, it was highlighted that Azerbaijan and the Holy See have strong relations that are important for fostering interfaith dialogue and promoting multiculturalism. As in Italy, also highly valued Azerbaijan's policy in the multiculturalism sphere, where different nationalities, different ethnic groups can coexist peacefully with each other. Italy, especially Vatican, highlighted it many times, and it's a topic among the most important topics to be discussed at a higher level. Education, tourism, and many other spheres. So from the historical background of these bilateral relations, what we have today and for the future, two sides are willing to promote and enlarge the scope of cooperation. So visit of the President of Italy to Azerbaijan, then the visit of the First Vice President Mehriban Aliyeva to Italy, now the visit of Ceyhun Bayramov to Italy. We can see in 1 year, just within several months, so many important events happen, and that will definitely affect positively the relations for the future.
Yeah, as you say, a long track record of cooperation between the two countries. Clearly, you mentioned a number of areas there of opportunity for further cooperation. For Foreign Minister Bayramov, what do you think his priorities, though, are going to be going into this meeting?
I guess one of the key elements, as I already mentioned, to strengthen the dialogue between two sides in the spheres which already have a very solid background. So it's not something to start from zero. It's just to have a discussion on what has been achieved, then promote the willingness of Azerbaijan, the government and the people also to see the development and the cooperation. I guess I have to mention here the establishment of the Azerbaijan-Italy University, The Italian universities has very solid cooperation background with other university here in Azerbaijan. And President of Italy, during his visit to Azerbaijan, personally participated at the opening of this university. And as it was highlighted and mentioned by President Ilham Aliyev, the students who studied here from Italy and the students from Azerbaijan who is studying in Italy, they are the ambassadors of our countries, let's say, to exchange the future cultural, to foster the cultural cooperation between the two countries. They're young ambassadors. So this is very important. Then also the discussion how the companies can foster the cooperation. Here we come again to the energy platform. As has been mentioned many times, Europe needs Azerbaijani gas, and Azerbaijan, through the South Sea gas corridors, the future enlargement of this project, probably with the participation of new countries like Turkmenistan, Europe is willing to invest and be part of new energy communications developments. And Italy is a partnering country with its companies and energy sphere, can definitely be among the top investors who can share the experience when it comes to green technology for the future. Then Karabakh and East Zangezur restoration and development, Italian company are already present on the liberated lands of Azerbaijan. And for the future, when we see the intensification of the contacts between European Union companies and European countries and Azerbaijan, I guess there will be more priority given to the Italian companies in different spheres.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Anastasia. Just tell us more about that, the reconstruction that's going on in the liberated territories. Give us a sense of the types of partnerships, the type of collaborations which we could start to see between Italy and Azerbaijan.
First of all, as I already mentioned, Italy can also inspire other European Union member states to invest in the restoration process of Karabakh and East Zangezur, being among the top investors for the future. I would like to bring to the attention the words said by President Ilham Aliyev at the meeting with the President of Italy during his visit to Azerbaijan. He said that when the implementation of TAP project was under the question, when there were some doubts among the European Union states, it was actually Italy and President Mattarellas' personal intervention into the process in this issue after the visit, as well as his efforts in regulating these issues. So here, when there are still some countries who are quite skeptical about the situation in the region due to the political sensitivity, I guess after August 8th meeting in Washington, there are more clear understanding in Europe what is happening in the region, but still there are some countries who are trying to investigate more. And Italy, as a very close partner with Azerbaijan, can show a good sample to other countries and the companies in Europe why the cooperation with Azerbaijan is important, why Europe actually needs Azerbaijan and its future projects, whether mind it's about energy, it's about green energy transition, whether for the future communication with Central Asia. We spoke with you in this program before why Washington is so much interested to work with C5 countries, C5+1, and now it's C6+1 platform in the cooperation between Washington and Central Asian states and plus Azerbaijan. But we cannot ignore that the same route is important for Europe, whether it's Middle Corridor, whether it's new transport developments, Zangezur Corridor, and etc. And energy especially. It's more about Europe, but not about the United States when it comes to energy developments. Therefore, here again, Azerbaijan is as a hub of these new developments. And Italy, with its growing interest to be mentioned in the future platforms and projects with Azerbaijan, can really show the right path for the different European institutions, why and how Azerbaijan matters for Europe in the future.
Finally, Anastasia, I just want to get your view on the importance of interfaith dialogue. So often that can be a key component, a key catalyst for diplomacy, can't it? Particularly in the case of Italy. At the Vatican, just give us a sense of the themes that have stood out during discussions and how you expect that to impact cultural outreach and connections between the two countries.
Again, during this meeting, actually at the all bilateral meetings being held between the officials from Azerbaijan and Italy, the interfaith dialogue, cultural diplomacy are being highlighted, and religious heritage preservation. I do remember even during the time when there were some attempts by the Armenian lobby or Armenian diaspora in the European countries to position Azerbaijan and the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia as interreligious. It was actually Vatican served as a very good example that Azerbaijan do respect all the religious cooperation, all religions and all ethnical groups. And there were many samples brought how Azerbaijan, and especially the Haidar Aliyev Foundation, with a personal participation of the first Vice President Mehriban Aliyeva at the restoration and then opening of the Christian heritage in Vatican, for example. And it was also highlighted and let's say brought as an example of the popes in Vatican. Therefore, I guess we have a very solid background in this particular way of cooperation, and particular focus was also paid for Azerbaijan's role as a Muslim majority country investing in the restoration of Christian heritage, not only in the country itself, because we do also have here the churches in Azerbaijan and on the liberated lands as well. But we are a Muslim majority country, but still we are investing a lot in the restoration, not only in Azerbaijan, but in other countries as well, particularly in Italy. So during this visit, I guess, the visit of Minister Bayramov to Italy, new areas of collaboration could also include the investigations of the heritage, then academic exchange and continued restoration work, signaling that cultural diplomacy remains a stable pillar of bilateral engagement. It's a symbolical, it's important from the political side, and it's one of the ways where even the young diplomats, which I mentioned before, can serve, can bring very new impetus in these developments, promoting the culture, promoting the experience two sides have in the past, and also serve as a young ambassador for the future collaboration, even interfaith diplomacy in this particular way.
Anastasia, it's always great to get your analysis,
Thank you very much for
on
having
front
me.
lines, inside politics, or right here with us on Primetime. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we're back, Katie Wilson will be with us breaking down the very latest business news stories of the day. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime now. Katie Wilson is with us to break down the latest business news stories of the day. Katie, what's on your agenda tonight?
Well, Guy, it's a mix of stories tonight, from Asahi's scramble to recover after a major cyber attack to Wall Street's Thanksgiving rebound, and even the Pope has a few words of wisdom about how we use AI. Let's take a look. First this evening, Japan's Asahi Group is still untangling the mess from a major hack that hit in September. The fallout has stretched from leaked customer data to drinks shortages across Japan. Now, Asahi says it hopes to get operations back to normal by February.
Japan's Asahi Group on Thursday said it aims to normalise logistical operations by February. That's after a cyber attack in September forced a widespread suspension. The beverage maker, known for its flagship Superdry beer, also said the personal details of over 1.5 million customers may have been leaked in the September attack. Asahi said details of some 275,000 current and former employees and their families may also have been compromised. The attack caused widespread outages in areas including order processing, shipping and call centres. That's as Asahi became the latest victim among companies worldwide targeted by hackers. Earlier this year, automaker Jaguar Land Rover was forced to close factories, while retailer Marks & Spencer had to suspend online orders. Asahi pushed the release of its full-year earnings to more than 50 days after the end of the financial year, which ends December the 31st. The disruption saw restaurants, bars and stores in Japan run low on Asahi drinks. Last month, Russian-speaking ransomware group Keylin claimed to have orchestrated the attack. On Thursday, Asahi said it had not paid any ransom.
Over to Wall Street now, which bounced back on Wednesday with all three major indexes logging a fourth straight day of gains. Investors shrugged off last week's tech valuation jitters, helped by upbeat guidance from Dell and a few surprise wins from retailers. It makes for good news ahead of the Thanksgiving market break.
U.S. stocks ended higher on Wednesday, with the Dow and S&P 500 gaining more than 0.2% and the Nasdaq adding about 0.8%. All three indexes notched their fourth consecutive daily gains as investors looked past worries over inflated tech valuations that dragged all three to losses last week. Those fears were eased further on Wednesday by Dell's consensus-beating fourth-quarter revenue forecast, which sent its shares up nearly 6%. Leah Bennett is chief investment strategist at Concurrent Investment Advisors.
Part of the reason the market is up today is you had Dell come out and raise guidance and estimates and kind of gave more assurance on the AI trade. So you're seeing a lot of those stocks up. And then there were really pretty poor expectations for the retailers coming into this season. You've actually seen some beat expectations, albeit low expectations, but you've seen better earnings and guidance from those companies as well. So I think that's leading to the pickup in the market.
Urban Outfitters was among those retailers that beat expectations, sending its shares up 13.5%. Among other movers, human resources software firm Workday slid about 8% after the company reported third-quarter subscription revenue in line with estimates. And shares of Deere slid more than 5.5% after forecasting weaker-than-expected annual profit weighed down by tariff effects. U.S. financial markets are closed Thursday for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Staying in the US, and Tesla's sales slump is going from bad to worse, even as Elon Musk shifts focus to self-driving tech and humanoid robots. The company is losing ground in its biggest markets. Europe is the real trouble spot, with sales collapsing and rivals surging, raising fresh questions about what's next for the once dominant EV maker.
Tesla faces a sales crisis that seems to be intensifying. That's while CEO Elon Musk has pivoted focus to the carmaker's self-driving and humanoid pursuits and winning shareholder approval for his $1 trillion pay package. The EV maker has faced pressure in the world's three biggest car markets, Europe, China and the US. For Europe, it's particularly dark, with industry data showing sales plummeted 48.5% across the continent in October, compared to the same month last year. For the year, its sales are down about 30% in the region, while industry-wide EV sales jumped 26%. A wave of Chinese brands has entered Europe with intriguing designs and broader choice on types. And stats show rival BYD outsold Tesla in the region more than 2-1. The weak European results suggest there's no quick fix for the sales turmoil that began last year, which was sparked by Musk publicly praising far-right figures, setting off protests across the region. Musk's gone relatively quiet on politics, but Tesla's European business has not recovered, signalling more fundamental problems. More widely, Tesla's global vehicle deliveries are expected to decline 7% this year, figures showed, after a 1% drop in 2024. That's despite record Q3 deliveries, boosted by American buyers racing to beat the expiration of an EV tax credit at the end of September. Yet, as recently as 2023, Tesla's Model Y SUV was the world's top-selling car, gas or electric. Analysts say the EV maker's narrow lineup of models has grown stale and needs a new model to revive sales. But as Musk looks to robotics, there's little evidence of one in the pipeline. Tesla did not respond to requests for comment.
China's ride-hailing giant Didi is back in growth mode, posting an 8.6% jump in quarterly revenue and a sharp rise in profits. The company is expanding fast overseas, even though those ventures are still losing money. But at home, Didi's holding its lead despite fierce competition.
Didi Global's revenue rose 8.6% in the third quarter. That's according to China's largest ride-hailing platform on Wednesday. Revenue hit $8.28 billion for the 3 months ended September, while net profit was also well up on a year ago at close to $212 million. The company has expanded internationally, particularly in Latin America, where it offers both ride-hailing and food delivery services, although its expansion outside of China weighed on profitability. Adjusted losses from the overseas segment rose significantly to around $243 million. Didi held its leading position in ride-hailing in China. That's despite growing competition from rivals like Alibaba and Meituan. Didi resumed expansion 2 years ago after a regulatory crackdown that began in 2021 when the company pursued a US IPO without Beijing's approval.
And in another sign of China's growing global reach, Puma may be the next big target. Reports say Chinese sportswear giant Anta is weighing a takeover bid for the German brand, possibly with private equity in tow. The speculation sent Puma shares soaring, as rivals like ASICS are also said to be eyeing the struggling company.
Chinese sportswear maker Anta is reportedly one of the firms exploring a potential takeover of the German sportswear brand Puma. The report from Bloomberg News on Thursday said Anta has been working with an advisor to evaluate a bid and may team up with a private equity firm if it decides to move forward with an offer. The report cited people familiar with the matter. Anta Sports declined to comment on the report when contacted by Reuters. Shares in Puma rose around 13% in early deals. Other potential bidders could include Chinese sportswear group Li Ning, and Puma could attract interest from Japanese sportswear company ASICS. Puma's biggest shareholder, Artemis, the privately owned holding company that controls Gucci owner Kering, said it is considering all options for its 29% stake in the sportswear brand. Puma recently announced it was cutting 900 corporate jobs as part of a turnaround plan. That's after lower demand for its products and a hit from US tariffs on imports impacted its business. Puma's market valuation is currently $2.92 billion according to LSEG data. Its share price has halved since the start of the year, as it is losing ground to rivals in an increasingly competitive sportswear market.
And finally, even the Pope is weighing in on the AI boom, as tech giants jostle for chip power and governments race to build their own systems. Pope Leo told young people that AI may shape the era, but it can't replace human judgment. His advice: use it, learn from it, but don't expect it to do your homework.
Could Meta rival Nvidia? And what the Pope thinks about artificial intelligence. This is AI Weekly. Meta Platforms is in talks with Google to spend billions of dollars on the company's chips for use in its data centers starting from 2027. That's according to the information. If confirmed, it could pitch Google as a serious rival to semiconductor giant Nvidia. The report said talks also involve Meta renting chips from Google Cloud as early as next year. US President Donald Trump signed an executive order to launch a government-wide effort to build an integrated AI platform. It's to harness federal scientific data sets to train next-generation technologies. The effort is called Genesis Mission. It aims to transform research and speed discoveries by using massive government scientific data sets. Trump directed the US Energy Department and US national laboratories to, quote, unite America's brightest minds and most powerful computers. The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin doesn't use AI tools himself, but officials who work for him do. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov added the Kremlin used AI tools to help sort through citizens' questions during Putin's annual question and answer event. Putin last week called for a national task force to coordinate Russia's work on homegrown generative AI models. He said they were vital to preserving Russian sovereignty. Alphabet is on track to hit a historic $4 trillion market valuation. It's been powered by an impressive year-long rally fueled by the Google parents' sharpened focus on AI tools. The firm joins an elite club of big tech companies racing to dominate the booming technology as AI continues to attract Wall Street this year. Leo, the first US Pope, discussed AI with 15,000 of the country's youth via a video call. It came during a live transmission from the Vatican to a National Catholic Youth Conference in Indiana. Leo told the young viewers AI is, quote, becoming one of the defining features of our time, but he cautioned it must be used responsibly.
In your education, make the most of this time. AI can process information quickly, but it cannot replace human intelligence. And don't ask it to do your homework for you. It cannot offer real wisdom. It misses a very important human element, AI will not judge between what is truly right and
Wise words from the Pope there. Well, that's a wrap on this edition of the Business Brief. Back to you, Guy. Are you guilty of using a bit of AI?
Well, I've sorely been tempted. When I was at university, when I was a student, Katie, there was barely such a thing as a search engine. So the temptation wasn't quite as strong. Do you think if you went back to being a student today that you'd be tempted to let AI do your homework?
Well, it's an easy temptation, isn't it? We had Google Translate was just coming about, but we really couldn't trust it. So I'd still be a bit sceptical, I think.
Indeed. I think the Pope's quite right there. Thank you very much. Thanks, Katie. Well, after the break, we take a look at a shooting near the White House that leaves 2 National Guard soldiers critically injured, sparking sharp political debate. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Now, 2 National Guard soldiers were critically wounded in a shooting near the White House on Wednesday. The suspect, identified as 29-year-old Afghan national Ramanullah Lakhanwal, is in custody with non-life-threatening injuries. Well, President Donald Trump has linked the attack to the Biden administration's immigration policies, calling it a monstrous ambush-style attack and vowing to review all Afghan entries under the previous administration.
2 National Guard soldiers were shot and critically wounded on Wednesday in downtown Washington near the White House. Investigators identified the suspect as Ramanullah Lakhanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan national. The suspect, who is in custody, was also shot and had wounds that were not believed to be life-threatening. Speaking in a video address from Mar-a-Lago on Wednesday night, President Donald Trump linked the shootings with the Biden administration and illegal immigration.
He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden. A disastrous president, the worst in the history of our country.
Shortly after Trump's remarks, Washington said it had stopped processing immigration applications from Afghanistan. Since then, the Trump administration has asked for 500 more National Guard troops to be deployed to D.C. The move comes after Washington previously asked a federal appeals court for the original number of soldiers to remain there after a judge ruled the deployment was unlawful.
President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army, to the National Guard to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful.
Nearly 2,200 troops currently are assigned to the Joint Task Force operating in the city, according to the government's latest update.
Well, as a result of the shooting, the US Citizenship and Immigration Services has suspended all immigration processing for Afghan nationals indefinitely. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more details now from Kabul.
Authorities say this shooting happened just blocks from the White House in what investigators are calling an ambush attack on Thanksgiving Eve. The suspect has been identified as 29-year-old Ramanullah Lakhanwal, an Afghan national who entered the US in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome, the Biden-era program that resettled Afghans who aided US forces during the war. Officials say Lakhanwal was wounded in an exchange of gunfire before being arrested. He had no known criminal history and was living in Washington state. President Trump called the shooting an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. He said his administration would re-examine all Afghans who entered the US during Joe Biden's presidency. Hours later, US Citizenship and Immigration Services announced it had halted all Afghan-related immigration cases. saying the protection and safety of our homeland remains its priority, while security and vetting protocols are reviewed. A senior Trump administration official reported that Lakhanwal applied for asylum in December 2024 and was approved this April, 3 months after Trump took office. A News attempted to contact Afghan officials for comment, but has not yet received a response. So far, investigators have not yet identified a motive, and officials say the review of the suspect's background is still underway. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Well, joining me now to discuss this in detail is A News' Andy Mioch. Andy, thanks for joining us. Strong words there from President Trump. The call for extra troops as well from the Secretary of War. What do you think the administration wants the public to take from the way that they're reacting to this?
Well, Guy, I think it's best summed up by one of the quotes in that pre-taped video when Donald Trump pledged and said, "We will make America totally safe again," as he was announcing that he directed the Defense Secretary to deploy additional 500 National Guardsmen to the Capitol. In those pre-taped remarks from Florida, where he's spending Thanksgiving, he branded the shooting an act of evil and an act of terror, saying that the suspect, as we could have heard in the introductory packages, came from Afghanistan, but he added that that country is, quote, a hellhole. He called for his government to re-examine all Afghan immigrants who came into the country during previous President Joe Biden's administration. Now, the suspect has been identified, as we've heard. The Department of Homeland Security has said that he entered the country 4 years ago under the Operation Allies Welcome. Many Afghans, after the American withdrawal, became eligible for special immigrant visas, qualifying for lawful permanent residence and the opportunity to eventually apply for U.S. citizenship. Officials at that time said that before being admitted, all applicants underwent rigorous screening and vetting to ensure that they were not a national security threat. Now, the current Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in the wake of the shooting that many were admitted without vetting, which is a claim disputed by humanitarian organizations. For example, the Afghan Evac nonprofit, the coalition that supported the relocation efforts, said in a statement that Afghan immigrants undergo, quote, some of the most extensive security vetting of any population entering the country. They also cautioned against vilifying an entire community over the actions of one person.
And Andy, pushback there from the humanitarian organisations. What about political pushback? I mean, we're well used now, aren't we, to hearing very, very strong language from President Trump in a wide range of different situations. Do you think this linking this very strongly to the Biden administration immigration policy, using President Biden's name, saying, you know, he flew them in, this sort of politicization of a tragic event like this, do you think that, is this something that President Trump will just be able to sort of get away with, to do with impunity, or will there be some opportunity for his political opponents to push back, saying, hey, you may have gone too far this time, Mr. President?
They may as well have an opportunity. When you look at that video, it was quite politically charged. Trump even said that the incident underscores the single greatest national security threat facing the nation. At one point, he pivoted to Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, saying that hundreds of thousands of Somalians are tearing apart what was once a great state. Just to put that in some factual realm, according to the latest census data, the Somali community in Minnesota numbers roughly 87,000 people. They have been members of the city councils. There's even Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who Trump does not like very much. Obviously, one of Donald Trump's domestic priorities is migration. He let us know from the get-go. He froze refugee admissions into the United States as soon as he took office in January as part of his wide-ranging crackdown on immigration. His second term saw increased immigration enforcement in cities. You remember, I remember, everyone remembers those ICE raids with which at least half a country strongly disagrees with. Those led to protests, most notably the violent ones in Los Angeles. That was, by the way, the first time that Trump had deployed National Guard troops to one of U.S. cities. More recently, in late October, Trump set the refugee admissions cap for fiscal year 2026 at a record low 7,500. Now that's the lowest number since the program was conceived in 1980. And it's, of course, quite a steep decrease when compared to the last year's ceiling of 125,000 set by his predecessor, Joe Biden. The Trump administration, however, said it would focus on bringing in white South Africans who are allegedly facing discrimination and violence back home, which are claims the South African government strongly rejects. Just a few days ago, we've seen reports of an internal U.S. government memo circling around in which the administration has ordered a broad review of all refugees who entered the country under former President Joe Biden. That order would apply to about 233,000 refugees who had entered between January of 2021 and February of 2025. It also orders a halt to all processing of applications for permanent residence for refugees who have, again, entered under Biden.
So we can see where the lines are drawn between the politicians, the organizations, the sense of polarization. What about the media in the US, Andy? How are they reacting to this situation?
Well, obviously, as this is still a developing story, we get new headlines each minute, basically. But I scoured some of the most trusted, most viewed media outlets, and what I can tell you that one of these more recent details dominated the headlines, and that is the officials saying that the suspect had worked with military units connected with the CIA during the Afghanistan war. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Fox News, and others were leading with that piece of news. Fox was also carrying a quote from CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who said that, quote, "In the wake of the disastrous Biden withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Biden administration justified bringing the alleged shooter to the United States in September 2021 due to his prior work with the US government, including CIA as a member of a partner force in Kandahar." Fox also interviewed the Attorney General Pam Bondi, who said that the Justice Department is going to do everything in its power to seek the death penalty for the suspected shooter. NBC was headlining that the DC shooting suspect is an Afghan national who served alongside US troops, adding that Rahmanullah Lakanwal served 10 years in the Afghan Army. CNN was, of course, besides the CIA stuff, leading with a headline that read, "Trump vows immigration crackdown after DC National Guard shooting." In an accompanying analysis, they say that it took only a few hours for President Donald Trump to turn what he called an act of evil and an act of terror into a full-blown argument for an even more intense crackdown on immigration. The Washington Post also focused on Trump ordering more troops to DC. CBS headlined that the suspect is held, citing officials, while ABC and the USA Today were focusing on the National Guard members who still remain in critical condition.
And finally, Andy, there's been a debate for some time now, hasn't there, about the safety of citizens inside the US Capitol. Again, two very strongly held opposing views about this. To what extent do you think this incident will impact that debate? And will it embolden those that believe that Washington is not a safe place to be?
Well, when we look back at the start of this National Guard episode in Washington, D.C. back in August, Donald Trump declared a so-called crime emergency in Washington and deployed thousands of National Guard troops. At the time, local authorities, mayors, governors, they said, we oppose the deployment. However, Trump said, this is how we get our capital back. According to the most recent update, there were nearly 2,200 Guard personnel in the Capitol. Now, just the day before this incident, as U.S. President was traditionally pardoning the turkeys on the White House lawn, he had said, he touted the deployment decision, saying that D.C. is now, quote, a totally safe city. Now, this was just the day before the incident. A week ago, exactly, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to end the deployments of federal troops in Washington. District Judge Gia Cobb concluded that President Donald Trump's military takeover in Washington illegally intrudes on local officials' authority to direct law enforcement in the district. She did, however, put the order on hold for 21 days to allow for an appeal. Now, having this in mind, as well as the shooting incident, it is not yet clear how long will these National Guard troops remain in the Capitol. Lawyers from the District of Columbia Attorney General's office who fought Trump's decision to deploy National Guard troops said last week that the troops are likely to remain in the city through at least next summer.
Andy, we thank you as always for your analysis. A difficult and complex case. Thank you very much for staying on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, army officers in Guinea-Bissau announced they've taken control, imposing wide restrictions just days after the presidential vote. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching PrimeTime. Turning to West Africa, and a group of army officers in Guinea-Bissau has seized power in a military coup days after presidential elections. Well, in an announcement on state TV, they told viewers they had taken control and were imposing sweeping restrictions across the country. Here's more.
A group of military officers in Guinea-Bissau in West Africa say they have seized control of the country, detaining President Umaro Sissoco Embalo and suspending the electoral process just days after a tightly contested presidential vote. Gunfire was heard around key government sites in the capital, Bissau, including the Election Commission, the Presidential Palace and the Interior Ministry. Officers then appeared on state TV saying they had created the High Military Command, deposed the president and shut the borders to stop what they called a plot involving a well-known drug baron.
The High Military Command for the Restoration of National Security and Public Order has decided to immediately remove the President of the Republic, close all institutions of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, suspend until further notice.
The takeover comes as Guinea-Bissau awaited preliminary results from Sunday's presidential election, due on Thursday. Both Embalo and his main challenger, Fernando Dias, had already claimed victory. Embalo later confirmed he had been removed.
I am the first president of Guinea-Bissau to vote for a second mandate, and I hope to continue like this because unfortunately none of the others managed to complete their mandate and then come back to vote. I hope everything happens in calm, peace and stability.
Government sources say Fernando Dias, former Prime Minister Domingos Simoes Pereira and Interior Minister Botche Kande have also been detained. The coup is being led by Denison Kanha, head of the Presidential Guard. Guinea-Bissau has a long history of coups and political instability. Embalo, in office since 2020, says he has survived several previous attempts to remove him.
A News correspondent Chris Okenringer has more now from Kinshasa.
Guy, there was gunfire heard in the Guinean capital, Bissau, hours before the military officers announced the coup. Hundreds of people fled the city as the shots rang out. The officers have declared an overnight curfew, the closure of the country's borders, and the suspension of the electoral process. They say they seized power to foil a plot by unnamed politicians to destabilize their country. They've formed what they call the High Military Command for the Restoration of Order and urged the population to remain calm. The West African nation had just had an election on Sunday and was awaiting the outcome. The incumbent President Umaru Sissoco Embalou and the head of the Party for Social Renewal, Fernando Diaz, were the leading candidates. Both of them claimed victory. Government sources say the military officers have detained the president and his challenger. Leaders of election observation missions from the African Union and the West African trade bloc ECOWAS have expressed deep concern about the announcement of the coup d'etat. Guinea-Bissau has had multiple coups since gaining independence from Portugal in 1974. In October, a group of military officers were arrested for allegedly planning a coup. Portugal has called for a return to constitutional order and urged supporters of both candidates to avoid acts of violence.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Silvanus Karamira, an international broadcaster and senior editor in Kigali, Rwanda. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Prime Time. Suspension of the electoral process then. The military's obviously made this dramatic move. How are regional organisations reacting to this?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is not different from some of other coups that have been happening in the West African countries. We saw it in Niger, we saw it in Burkina Faso, we saw it in Mali, and other countries. So, for example, the African Union, the Economic Commission for West African States, ECOWAS, and other bodies have been condemning this, this coup. But then this is just like any other shout that we have always been seeing, but which does not change anything on the ground. So I would say that such kind of calls and denial of the military junta does not bring any change. So you said we've seen multiple condemnations, communique from different international bodies, from different people, including the AU. But what do these calls and looming allegations from about this coup being to change on the ground? We don't see any change.
And one would imagine that such serious action doesn't just happen overnight, that there must have been a build-up, underlying tensions. What were those circumstances which led to where we find ourselves today?
Yeah, of course, looking at this situation, you have to go back to when President Embalo was getting into power, because in the election which was held in 2019, of course, there was some kind of what we are seeing today. He got in power in a very tense situation with 54 votes. So from that time, we saw the country still grappling with some tensions in between, especially struggling with the power. And this is because, historically speaking, this country, ever since it got independence 1974 from Portugal, the military has been such kind of looked at as one that is very strong. The democratic institutions have been kind of not given enough time to actually see how they can govern this country. So I think what we are seeing today, the coup d'etat that happened 2 days ago, is actually coming out of the contentious environment between the two rivals. In this case, the incumbent Umaro and Diaz. So even before the Electoral Commission could have announced it or was going to announce, that's when the military actually stepped in, claiming that they are coming to bring about the order and calm in the country. But then some analysts, including myself, we don't see any problem that was already there to triggering having such kind of coup. We attribute this to the underlying challenges of bad governance, weak institutions, and historic background of the coup, because this is the ninth coup d'etat which has happened ever since this country got independence 50 years ago. So I would say the whole we are seeing today happening in Guinea-Bissau is actually accumulated from the weakness in the governance and kind of disorganization in this West African country.
And the vote now halted. What does this mean for citizens re-engaging with government, with the democratic process? How long is this halt likely to occur for? And what are the immediate steps to kind of connect the country, if you like, back together?
It is just uncertainty because the military junta has just established their military, administration, so to say, and they are not clear whether or not they will stay in power for how long of period of time. Probably we expect maybe 1 or 2 years before they bring back the democratic process to have the elected government on power. So it's just about, even the people there are not certain of what is going to happen, because the military have been installed on power, and therefore we are likely to see what is happening, or rather happened in the neighboring countries, just like I said at the beginning, in the countries like Mali, Guinea, Conakry, Burkina Faso, Niger. And I think what we are seeing is kind of waves that have been taking place across the West African countries. So you ask me what is going to happen? I don't see it's a grim future, because the military junta have not been coming out clearly to tell us when or rather their expectations, because they are put to hold everything. Every government institutions that have been operating, they are now down. They have halted their activities and the services to the people of Guinea-Bissau. So to me, it's just an uncertainty that is lying there, and we are perhaps following up on what is transpiring there. But as of now, I think the country is just in darkness, and we have no idea of what is going to happen.
It's very interesting what you were saying about Mali, Niger, other West African countries, and the waves, as you described it, the interconnectivity, if you like, of countries that have their own tensions to manage. What do you expect the impact of this coup to be on those neighbouring countries? Do you think that this will contribute to disruption, or do you think it will have some other effect?
To respond to your question, you have to go back to what is still happening in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and perhaps at some point, at least maybe Guinea-Conakry is showing some hope of restoration of democratic, process. So what is happening is likely to be what is happening in those countries that you and I have just mentioned, because we don't know what is going to happen, and I think this is going to trigger some other countries, neighboring countries, to actually follow suit, because currently in Africa we are seeing some revolutions mounting around. For example, we saw things happening in Madagascar, where youth stood up and they overthrew the government, the elected government of President Rajoelina. So I would say that we have this issue of military takeover as well as civil takeover. So I think all is embedded and embroidered around the weak of institutions and the bad governance. Because, for example, Guinea-Bissau is attributed to kind of, being roots, one of the roots that it is actually at some point referred to as a narcotic country, where drug traffickers from Latin America crossing over to Europe, and even some of the government actually entities and the people, so to say, have been involved in these activities, illegal activities, illicit money, and so on and so forth. So with this kind of chaos and the shallowness in place, without strong institutions, strong leader, strong visionary leader, we are likely to see such kind of chaos going on. So I think we shall expect such kind of coups, not only in Guinea-Bissau, but also in other countries. Because, first of all, from those countries that we mentioned earlier, there is no measures that have been taken against them. There's no, like African Union is just a toothless monster seated there, just releasing some communique and so on and so forth. So it's like nobody's actually taking care. Like we saw what happened in Gambia sometimes back when Jammeh was refusing to get out of the power. At least back in time, the ECOWAS military, group actually took up arms and they threatened to overthrow him. That's when we saw Barrow Adama coming on power, at least democratically. So if there is no a united call to actually stop this kind of chaos and coups, we are likely to see it spilling over in the West African, part of the continent, so to say.
It's very interesting, Mr. Karamira. You mentioned ECOWAS. You described the African Union as toothless. I was going to ask you about the pressure that might now be put upon the junta from other actors, like those two organisations, potentially also from international partners. What do you expect in terms of pressure, and how do you expect the junta to respond? Will they listen, do you think?
I don't think so. Because, if you look at the state in which the African Union is today and the African Union Commission today, it's to me, I'm sorry to say, it's toothless, just like I said, because you can see what is happening across Africa, and even go back beyond the borders of Africa, what is happening across the world. The world is like confusing now. And therefore, apart from just a communique and release of statements, I don't expect any other immense pressure exerted onto this junta. And remember, the members of the junta are also coming from the same army, which has been accused of involving in man and other, problems, with poverty crippling the entire country, from what we read, from what we see. And even those who actually should have taken up decisions to restore the country are also cited to be part of the problem. So to me, I think when you talk of pressure, who should exact pressure onto the military? Who? Is it AU that we are? I look at it as toothless, which solve the challenges in our region, even in East African, region where I'm situated. So I think it's a matter of time and see what is going to happen. But I don't see any pressure for sure. I don't see any pressure unless these military leaders maybe feel the pain of their people to actually, because when they took up, when they took up the coup, they said that they were coming to restore the country from their words, that the chaos was manifesting in the country. But which type of chaos they were referring to? Because the country has remained the same, with the trafficking across their porous borders and the other stuff going on. So I can't predict what is going to happen. I think, just like I said, we need some strong people, leaders with visionary kind of setting to actually restore such countries, our countries. Otherwise, I don't see any hope for because if they were to kind of ease the tension, they would have at least mentioned or even announced when they perhaps planning to restore the constitutional government, just like we saw in Guinea Conakry. When the current leader took up, he immediately announced that after 2 years, he was going to think about how to restore the democratic status of the country. But this one is like, we don't see anything. So,
very interesting indeed. Mr. Karamira, we thank you very much for joining us and for your analysis from Kigali in Rwanda. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, after the break, France's President Macron unveils 10-month voluntary military service in face of the Russian threat. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching PrimeTime. France has announced a new voluntary military service plan, becoming the latest European country to try to beef up its armed forces as the war in Ukraine continues. Ross Cullen reports.
Well, the French president announced this scheme at a military base on Thursday, and it means there'll be a shake-up in the structure of France's armed forces going forward. There are some 200,000 permanent members of the Army, Navy and Air Force, around 47,000 reservists, and there will now be this new third tier formed from the voluntary service. France is hoping that some 2,500 people sign up in the first year and up to 50,000 join by the year 2035. Most of the recruits will be 18 or 19-year-olds. They will spend 10 months undergoing basic military training, such as learning weapons handling, and they will be paid just under $1,000 a month. Now, there are other countries in Europe which have introduced similar schemes, such as in Belgium and in the Netherlands. Germany is also considering something along the same lines. France did away with conscription in 1996, but there are countries in Europe that have maintained compulsory national service, such as Greece and Finland. All of this is because leaders such as Emmanuel Macron believe that as a result of the war in Ukraine and ongoing Russian aggression around Europe, there has been a change in the overall security architecture and the security landscape in Europe, and such schemes needs to be brought to the fore. This new national military service will begin here in France next year. Ross Cullen, Ferry News in Paris.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further in the studio is A News' Nigar Shirinova. Nigar, good to see you back here in the studio with us. How is Paris framing this new voluntary service then? And why introduce it now?
Okay, so thank you for the question and thank you for having me. So the topic is indeed very interesting and significant. So France is presenting this voluntarily military service for the young people aged 18 and 19. It's very appealing for introducing it actually right now. So the program is actually now is more voluntarily, and they will they are trying to appeal the attention and have more young people in the reserves. So as it was announced today, they are trying to engage with the young people. Paris's official goal is to make sure that actually young people and the armed forces, they are connected to each other, and to make the young people to be more engaged in the defense of the country. And also the question, of course, arises here: why actually now? Why they are doing it now? This is very important indeed, because now in our contemporary world, 2025, in Europe is having concerns and threat, especially after 2022 Russia-Ukraine conflict. So there is a threat in the region, in the Eastern Europe particularly. So France is now trying to showcase to its allies as well that actually they are investing in their defense, in their military, and they are showing that they are ready to the international pressure, and they are showing their readiness to the emergency situations in Europe. It's actually like a political theater, we can call it. So it shows that to their allies that we are ready. Macron and its ministers actually, they are in their official statements. They were today. It was announced this project, the voluntary military project. They are investing on it, and actually they have some goals. Let me introduce these goals to you. So the goal is here that this program will start from the next year summer, so 2026 summer, and they are planning to have actually few thousands of young people there. The reports cite that the number will be about 2,000 and 3,000 for the 2026, for the beginning of the project, let's call it. And then they have some goals. So the goal is by 2030 actually to have their 10,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big number actually. 10,000 people, and 2035 goal, to meet 2030s, the goal is 50,000. This is like a not small number. That's very appealing. And also they will pay the salaries to those young people. It's around, as I read, it's around 800 and 1,000 euros to each of them, and they will also have units in the different across the France, in the different parts of the France. So that's very interesting indeed. In the timing is very interesting.
Nigar, from what I've seen before, it's surprising to me that young people in Western Europe would be so interested in getting involved. I saw on another international news channel, I saw recently some Vox Pop interviews that were done in the UK with young people, and they were asked a question along the lines of, would you be prepared to fight for your country? And the answers ranged from no way to of course not. It was a sort of blanket disengagement with anything like that.
Yes.
I just wonder, how long are these individuals going to be expected to get involved for? Is it going to be many months? And do you think the government's got this right? Have they evaluated the scale of the demand? Have they got that right, do you think?
Oh, that's very interesting. This is young generation. Now we can expect everything from the Generation Z and the generation after, actually. The thinking is different. In our contemporary world, everything is changing now, and together with the generation and children, young people. So what we can say that's very interesting. They are
but it's
more
10,
like
sorry about it's 10 months, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a long time, isn't it?
Duration is 10 months. But the interesting moment is here that they're investing in this 10 months voluntary program. But is it really like there might be some critics that are those young people are really ready to fight if there is a situation, if there is a challenge, if there is a war in France, in Europe. So is this just voluntary program, which is 10 months, not so long, and it's not like they are not professional military, they are not sustainably long term. So like it arises big questions.
It's a good point, because that is a different question, isn't it? There may well be people who are happy to get involved in the scheme, incentivized to do so, but really don't have so much intention to actually go out
to
and
join
fight.
that program. Actually, you should have big incentives. You should have some hope. You would like to have career in that field. So this is an important point.
And France has had national service before.
Yeah.
How does this scheme differ to past schemes?
Before it was actually it was universal mandatory service. It was actually till 1996, to be more precise, 22nd of February 1996. The President Jacques Chirac, he officially announced the suspension of the mandatory service, and the implementation started from 1997 till 2001, and in 2001 it was last part, and it was officially stopped, suspended. And after 2001 till 2019, so it was the journée d'appel de préparation à la défense. Sorry for my French. This program was one day mandatory program, and it was more about civic program. It was more about civilians. They were trained not so seriously for first aid, for first aid emergencies.
Citizenship.
Yeah, citizenship,
Yeah.
for in this direction. And after 2019, it was a Service National Universal, SNU, and it was also a volunteer program. It wasn't mandatory as before. And now they're changing it to voluntarily, but now their focus is more on defense and more on young people. The duration is 10 months. There is a salary for the young people, so they are trying to engage more people. They have exact goals of the people, like 50,000 till 2035. So big numbers. There is a clear goal, clear readiness, and showcasing to allies that we are investing on our defense military, we are getting prepared, and we are taking, actually, like France is taking serious actually this Russia-Ukraine conflict and threat in the region.
Okay, let's say I'm wrong or I've been too cynical about attitudes of Gen Z. Are there any other barriers, challenges that the government is going to have to face to really mobilise, get the numbers they're looking for with this scheme?
I think, of course, as in all newly established projects, there are some challenges, limitations that they face, they potentially can face. I would say it's recruitment process maybe, because the numbers are big, the goal numbers are big, and are they really trying to get attention and have those kind of number, a lot of young generation into the military, into the defense? How they are going to choose those? If it's like selection process. That's very also significant and interesting point, which is we don't know much information about this. The program is voluntary, but what's the recruitment process? And actually, for young people, why they should choose? There are a lot of right now in this time, everything is developed, social media and other careers. There are some new jobs which emerged, and there are many career opportunities for the young people. Why young people should be interested in this program? Why should join the military? So this is the question for the recruitment for the young people. There is also the question and challenge, limitation, I would say, of the benefits of salaries, if we can call it. So it was announced that it's something between €800 and €1,000. So is it enough competitive in the job market? Is it low of their expectations, because they are the 10 months? What will happen after 10 months? What's the afterwards? Are they going to stay there, to stay in the military and to serve for the state? Or is it just 10 months and that's all? What's the later? What will happen later? So this is also the question. And I would say also the diversity. We can say this challenge as well, because diversity is very important there. How they are going to take into consideration the socio-economic perspective, and also how they are going to choose people, and from which regions are they? Is it from all the France, across the France regions, or is it specific regions that they are trying to involve? This is also the question. And funding. Funding is also the question, because they are giving salaries, they are investing in this project. So if we, like, I don't know the exact number, but approximately it would be something like for 2030, 35, if their goal is 50,000 young people, and they will pay something between 800 and €1,000, it will be something around 2 billion euros. Actually, this is a big number. And who is going to fund this, and will the funding be sustained? This is also the question, because there are some other political important moments that government should take into consideration and fund. And now there is another big funding needed here in this project. So will it be funded sustainably and sustainable funding? So there are a lot of challenges.
A lot of challenges, a lot
Yeah.
of questions to be answered, and a lot of complexity too. And Nigar, finally, how does all this fit into the defence posture, the change in the military posturing that we've seen in France, like many other European countries? Does this play a role there too?
In France, you mean? Yeah, in France, they are investing in this, and they have some expectations out of this project actually. So this is political showcasing, demonstration that we are preparing. We see what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine front. There is a threat, and the situation in Eastern Europe is not so appealing, and other countries in the region, including France, they should be ready for any emergency situation. So they are showing that they actually investing and trying to enhance their military reserves and try to engage the civil society, civil people into the institutions, government institutions, and also to allies of France. They're showing that actually we are ready and we are investing on our military defense. And so this is more about showcasing to allies and making politically trying to have some kind of leadership in the region.
Nigar, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for shining a light on the many different components
to the story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this interesting discussion.
Okay, in the next part of the programme, we turn to our correspondents around the region, bringing you on-the-ground reporting and first-hand accounts from the stories shaping events. Tonight, first, let's head to Kazakhstan. Leaders of the Collective Security Treaty Organization countries met in Bishkek to counter transnational threats and strengthen regional security. They also discussed modernising their armed forces and enhancing joint military cooperation. Well, our correspondent Fariza Kalamazina reports now from Almaty.
Russia has proposed a program to modernize the armed forces of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. President Vladimir Putin announced the plan during a meeting with CSTO representatives in Bishkek, stating that it covers rearmament, joint training of military units and special forces, regular exercises, the development of air forces, air defense systems, and mechanisms for deploying peacekeeping forces. The discussion also focused on protecting the western borders of the CSTO. Belarusian officials said that the deployment of the Oreshnik missile system on their territory is intended to defend the organization from the west in response to activity near its western borders. The CSTO summit was held in Bishkek, chaired by Kyrgyz President Sadyr Japarov. Leaders from Russia, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan and Belarus attended, along with representatives from the organization's secretariat. They discussed coordination on collective security, the leadership structure for the coming years, and plans for closer cooperation. From 2026, Kyrgyz representative Talatbek Masadikov will take over as CSTO Secretary General. Also, during the summit, declaration of the Collective Security Council was adopted, along with several documents aimed at improving the organization's operations. This included an anti-narcotics strategy, a 5-year military cooperation plan, and measures to strengthen partnerships with other international organizations, including the CIS and SCO. Meanwhile, Armenia, which suspended its participation in 2024, once again did not send a delegation. Earlier, Deputy Foreign Minister Natsakan Safarian explained that Armenia does not take part in CSTO decision-making, but does not block its work, following a foreign policy based on national interests, diversification and balancing. He also added that the country is not currently considering leaving the organization. And the next CSTO summit, where Russia will assume the chairmanship, is scheduled for November 2026 in Moscow. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Over to Georgia now. A seemingly routine diplomatic meeting in Tbilisi may have profound implications for the fate of regional trade and Georgia's place within it. As the South Caucasus enters a new era of shifting alliances and infrastructure deals, conversation between Washington and Tbilisi is worth watching closely. A News' Nini Nikolashvili has more.
In Tbilisi, acting U.S. Ambassador Alan Purcell met with Georgian Finance Minister Lasha Khutsishvili. According to the U.S. Embassy, the two discussed strengthening bilateral economic ties, assessing the impact of U.S. sanctions on Russia, and exploring how Georgia might support the newly brokered corridor initiative, the Trump route for international peace and prosperity. Trip aims to link mainland Azerbaijan with its Nakhchivan autonomous region via southern Armenia, establishing a multimodal transport and energy corridor under U.S. supervision. For Georgia, this opens a critical question. Will Tbilisi be content watching from the sidelines, or will it maneuver to stay central to regional connectivity? Until now, Georgia has been a cornerstone of the so-called Middle Corridor, serving as a vital transit and logistics hub between Asia and Europe. Supporters of TRIP argue the corridor could reconfigure trade flows, offering a stable, US-backed alternative to routes passing through Russia or Iran. If Georgia aligns itself with TRIP-friendly infrastructure or logistics, for example by investing in link-ups, customs harmonization or transit services, it might not lose relevance. On the contrary, it could position itself as a complementary node, benefiting from spillover trade, investment and enhanced strategic importance. But there are risks. With TRIP bypassing Georgia, the country could see a reduction in transit revenues and lose some leverage over regional logistics. Moreover, dependence on corridor traffic that skirts Georgia might weaken its negotiating position in future regional deals. Finally, the geopolitics around TRIP are shifting, with growing Western influence in the South Caucasus and diminishing control by traditional powers such as Russia and Iran. As of now, Georgia has no formal role in TRIP. That makes this meeting significant. It might be Tbilisi's first step in deciding whether to adapt or risk being sidelined. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
And finally, to Uzbekistan. European and Central Asian officials have gathered in Tashkent for the Trans-Caspian Transport Corridor and Connectivity Investors Forum, focusing on new investments, modern logistics and expanding the region's links with Europe. A News' Sevil Rajapova is in the Uzbek capital with more.
The Tashkent Forum brought together ministers, international financial institutions and logistics experts to discuss the future of the Trans-Caspian Corridor, a key road linking Europe with Central Asia through rail, sea and road connections. Officials say the region needs faster, modern and predictable transport systems to unlock new economic opportunities. For Uzbekistan, a landlocked country, improved transit links is essential. Better connectivity can reduce transit times, lower costs and open new opportunities for businesses across the region.
From east to west, the transportation takes more than 45 days. With these projects, Trans-Caspian and Trans-Black Sea projects, we would like to reduce these 45 days to approximately 10 or 12 days. So it will provide huge advantages to business world. So it's a very valuable project in terms of...
For Uzbekistan, a landlocked country, improved transit links is essential. Better connectivity can reduce transit times, lower costs and open new opportunities for businesses across the region.
According to our current projections, if today the volume of cargo coming from China through our territory stands at around 5 to 6 million tons, we expect this figure to reach 10 to 15 million tons by 2030 to 2035, and up to 30 million tons by 2040. To handle such a large increase in transit, we need to develop the necessary infrastructure in Central Asia. Once this infrastructure is in place, the true potential of the region will be fully unlocked. It will allow us not only to strengthen links with the European Union, but also to deliver goods efficiently to neighbouring and southern countries.
Financial institutions such as the EBRD say investment in railways, ports and multimodal transport is essential for making the corridor commercially competitive. The firm builds on last year's European Union Central Asia Connectivity Investors Meeting, where around $10.8 billion was mobilized for sustainable transport links. This year's discussion aimed to turn those commitments into concrete projects, from expanding port capacity on the Caspian Sea to harmonizing customs procedures and reducing transit times. Officials say that by improving transport efficiency, the region could significantly boost trade, attract new investment, and strengthen integration with global markets. Iris Sivilva-Japo reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Well, that is all we have for you on Prime Time. Please do join us tomorrow night for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.